Does this 5,000-year-old tablet predict the day we will wake up? The translation doesn't say that. In recent weeks, an image has taken over social media. A clay tablet covered in cuneiform writing accompanied by a caption that reads, "Archaeologists discover 5,000-year-old Sumerian tablet that predicts a human awakening in 2025. Channels with millions of subscribers shared it. Spirituality groups reposted it. Ancient mystery pages posted thumbnails with rays of golden light emanating from the stone. The problem is that this tablet actually exists. It's catalogued, it's preserved, and its complete translation is available to anyone with internet access. And she doesn't say any of that. What she says is much more interesting and much more disturbing in its own way. Because the text that went viral as a prophecy of awakening is actually a fragment of the Epic of Atrahasis, one of the oldest texts humanity has ever produced. A work that speaks of creation, flood, extinction, and the brutal relationship between gods and human beings. But it doesn't talk about us waking up in 2025. It speaks of something that was asleep, and it wasn't humanity. To understand what this tablet truly contains, we need to go back to the beginning. Not the beginning of the video, but the beginning of everything. The sources I will use in this video are not speculation. They are the official collection of the British Museum and the electronic corpus of Sumerian texts at Oxford University, known by the acronym ETCSL. Anyone can access it for free. Assyriologists, who are the experts who have spent decades learning to read cuneiform writing, are unanimous about what this text says. The word that was translated on social media as awakening is the Akkadian term naparku. And naparku does not mean spiritual awakening, collective ascension, or future prophecy. It literally means cessation, stoppage, the end of something that was happening. In the context of the epic, what ceased was the noise of humans, and what awoke was the fury of a god. To comprehend the magnitude of what is written on these tablets, one must first understand what the Epic of Atrahasis is. It was composed in Babylon around 1700 BC, but the myths it records are much older. Researchers believe these narratives were transmitted orally for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, before finally being engraved on clay. The text we have today is a compilation. The original tablets were found in fragments, scattered across different excavations in the territory we now call Iraq. Some are in the British Museum in London. Some are in the Iraqi Museum in Baghdad. Other fragments are in university collections in the United States and Germany. The epic has three main parts. In the first part, the lesser gods, called the Igigu, are exhausted. They have been forced to work for eons, digging canals, irrigating fields, doing the hard work of creation. And they rebel. They refuse to continue. They go on strike, for lack of a better word. The great gods, gathered in council, decide to create a new species to take on this task. Humans, made of clay and the blood of a dead god, created specifically to lighten the burden of the lesser gods. If this sounds familiar, it's because versions of this myth echo in nearly every religious tradition of the Near East. The biblical Genesis, the Mayan Popol Vuh, Egyptian cosmologies. The idea that humans were created to serve is older than any religion we know today. But the Epic of Atrahasis goes further. It doesn't stop at creation. In the second part, humans multiply, and they start making noise. This is the excerpt that went viral. This is the fragment that was taken out of context and transformed into a prophecy of awakening. In the original Akkadian text, a literal translation approved by Assyriologists at the University of Oxford reads, "The country was becoming populous. The people were multiplying. The country was as noisy as a bull. The god was disturbed by their noise. Enlil heard the clamor and said to the great gods, 'The noise of humanity has become heavy for me. With their noise I am being deprived of sleep.'" Read this again carefully. It is not humanity that is asleep. It is God who cannot sleep because of humanity. What is being described is not some spiritual prophecy. It is the narrative justification for a God deciding to destroy the human race. Enlil, the lord of winds and storms, is suffering from cosmic insomnia. And the solution he finds is to eliminate us. That's what the tablet says. It's not an awakening, It's a death sentence. And what comes next is even darker. Enlil does not make his decision all at once. The epic narrates a series of attempts to exterminate or reduce humanity before the final flood. First, Enlil sends diseases. The land is ravaged by pestilence. People die by the thousands. But a god named Enki, the lord of the underground waters and of knowledge, intervenes. He instructs a sage named Atrahasis to pray to the gods of disease, to make offerings, to block the pestilence. And it works. Then Enlil tries drought. He closes the heavens. He prevents the rain. The land dries up. The crops fail. Famine sets in. Again, Enki intervenes. He opens the floodgates of the deep waters. He allows irrigation to continue. Humanity survives. Enlil tries again, this time with soil salinization, with insect plagues, with a complete blockage of resources. And in each attempt, Enki finds a way out. What the Epic of Atrahasis is describing is, in fact, a conflict between two opposing principles. Enlil represents the force that wants control, that wants silence, that wants things to remain in their predetermined place. Enki represents knowledge, adaptability, survival through intelligence. This conflict goes beyond myth. For the Babylonians, this was an explanation for why the world is so difficult, why there is drought, disease, famine, because there is a force that wants us silenced and another that wants us alive. And when all attempts fail, Enlil secretly summons the gods and announces the final plan, the flood. Enki is present at this council, but cannot act directly. The gods have sworn an oath not to reveal the plan to humans. Then Enki uses a loophole. He doesn't speak to Atrahasis directly. Instead, he speaks to the wall, to a reed wall, specifically. And he says, "Reed wall, listen. Reed hut, guard every word. Tear down your house, build a boat." Atrahasis, on the other side of the wall, hears everything. It's an ingenious solution. The oath wasn't broken. The gods weren't disobeyed. The information simply leaked through an inanimate intermediary. If this sounds like the beginning of a familiar story, it's because it is. The Epic of Atrahasis is recognized by scholars as the most direct source text for the story of Noah in Genesis. The similarities are too many to be coincidental. A wise man warned in advance, a boat built under divine instructions, a flood that destroys humanity, the survival of a remnant. But the text of Atrahasis has details that Genesis did not preserve. For example, the description of the flood itself is visceral in a way that Genesis avoids. The gods are terrified by what they have created. The goddess Ninhursag, who participated in the creation of humans, screams in pain as she sees her children die. She compares herself to a woman in labor who has given birth and now sees her child drowned. The gods, who ordered the extermination, are horrified by the extermination, as if they had underestimated the weight of the decision until it became too much to turn back. Long pause. This is writing. It's not prophecy. It's literature. It's psychology put into mythical form. The guilt of the perpetrator who cannot bear the consequences of what he has done. This was written 3,700 years ago, and it still resonates as human truth. How did these planks reach us? The story of the discovery of the Epic of Atrahasis is in itself extraordinary. In 1872, a self-taught researcher named George Smith was working as a volunteer at the British Museum, cataloging clay fragments brought back from excavations in Nineveh, in present-day Iraq. George Smith had no formal academic training. He was an engraver and coin worker, but he had an obsessive passion for Assyrian artifacts. Amid thousands of fragments, he began to recognize patterns. And in November of that year, while piecing together two different fragments, he read a passage that made him jump out of his chair, according to witnesses. The text described a great flood, a boat, a survivor who released birds to find out if the land had dried. It was the story of Noah, but engraved on clay in Akkadian script, 1,000 years before any known biblical version. The discovery shook the Victorian world. Newspapers of the time reported it on their front pages. The idea that the biblical account of the flood had a Mesopotamian precedent was deeply disturbing to the Christian culture of the time. George Smith was funded by the Daily Telegraph newspaper to go to Iraq and find the missing fragments, which he did, against all odds. He died at the age of 36 in 1876 from dysentery during his third expedition to Iraq. But the fragments he pieced together have permanently changed our understanding of human history. So why did the Atrahasis tablet become a prophecy of awakening? The answer is unsettling because it involves something we like to think we don't do. We want the past to confirm what we already believe. There is a well-documented pattern in how ancient myths are reinterpreted. Researchers call this prophetic retrofitting, which means taking an ancient text and fitting it with the meaning you want it to have, not the meaning it actually has. In the case of Atrahasis, the mechanism is simple. Someone found the Akkadian word that Assyriologists translate as disturbance or cessation. They decided it meant awakening. They took the phrase out of context, and they built a narrative on top of that. The problem isn't just that it's wrong. The problem is what gets lost. When you transform the Epic of Atrahasis into a prophecy about 2025, you obscure what it truly is. One of humanity's first attempts to understand why the world is unjust, why catastrophes exist, why it sometimes seems that forces beyond our control want to silence us. This is far more powerful than a prophecy, because it's a question that remains unanswered, and unanswered questions are more honest than fabricated answers. Let's be precise about what the academic community says about the Epic of Atrahasis. British Assyriologist Stephanie Daly from the University of Oxford published one of the most complete and accessible translations of the text in 1989, compiled in the volume Myths from Mesopotamia. The translation is publicly available and used as a reference in universities worldwide. Daly describes the epic as a text that deals with the creation of humanity, the relationships between gods and humans, and the flood, and that served as a direct source for later traditions, including the Gilgamesh cycle and the Hebrew Genesis. Nowhere in the text is there a prophecy directed toward the future. Mesopotamian epics don't work that way. They are explanatory, not predictive. They explain why the world is as it is, not what will happen. Professor Andrew George from the London School of Oriental and African Studies, who has spent decades working on the Gilgamesh and Atrahasis tablets, described in interviews that one of the greatest challenges in the field is combating popular interpretations that confuse mythological narrative with prophetic prediction. The text doesn't predict. The text reminds. It recalls a time, real or imagined, when human existence hung by a thread. And it offers, in the figures of Atrahasis and Enki, an answer. That survival does not come from obedience, but from wisdom, from the ability to hear through the walls, from building the boat before the rain begins. What makes the Epic of Atrahasis truly disturbing is not any prophecy about the present. That's what he says about the human condition at any time. We were created to work, to serve, to fill a role in a system we didn't choose. And when we become too numerous, too noisy, too inconvenient, the system tries to reduce us. Through disease, through hunger, through catastrophe. And in every attempt at extermination, what saves us is not force. It is not obedience. It is knowledge. It is the information that seeps through the walls. It is the wise person who knows how to build the boat when everyone else is still looking at the sky in bewilderment. In Akkadian, Atrahasis means extremely wise. Not the chosen one. Not the prophet. The extremely wise one. The text is saying that survival is a matter of applied intelligence, not divine grace. This was written on clay in 1700 BC, and we still haven't learned to read. Not because the text is difficult, but because it's easier to turn a cuneiform fragment into a viral prophecy than to grapple with the complexity of what it actually says. The Atrahasis tablet exists. It is approximately 3,700 years old in the form we know it, possibly transmitting much older myths. It is preserved. It is catalogued. It has been translated by experts with decades of training. She doesn't foresee an awakening by 2025. She describes a God who couldn't sleep because of the noise we were making. And perhaps that's why it resonates even today. Because we are still noisy. We are still inconvenient for systems that prefer our silence. And there are still Enkis in this world. Forces that whisper through the walls, that say, build the boat, that say what's coming is coming, be prepared. The difference between the viral version and the real version of this text is the difference between seeking a prophecy that tells us everything will work out and accepting a narrative that says it depends on you, on your intelligence, on your ability to listen to what the world is saying before it's too late. If you've made it this far, you're the type of person who wants the real story. And the real story is always more interesting. Subscribe to the Visionary Vault for more archaeological mysteries. Leave a comment. Were you familiar with the Epic of Atrahasis? What surprised you most about the real story behind this tablet? And if you've already seen the viral video that distorts this translation, share this one as a reply. Correct knowledge is always the best antidote. Until next time.